Hello guys, in today's video we are going to talk about one of the most important things that you should think about when you are playing poker in general. And that is, I'm gonna get into my PowerPoint presentation here. It is to play the player. Now, most of the discussions that I read in mid-stakes and low-stakes forums, and even high-stakes sometimes, is around how to play hands in general. Like, how do you build a general strategy to have like a solid base to stand on? And then it is just as if they think that if they have that, they're going to be able to beat the games. Now I'm going to tell you that if you want to climb up and play higher stakes, that is not the case. And you probably already figured that out because you are watching this video right now. So we're going to talk about this solid strategy, and I'm also going to talk about reads. And not just reads in general. I'm going to break it down into weak reads and powerful reads. These are two very different things, and I'm going to go into detail on both of them. And the last thing I want to mention is adjustments. Like, you can have millions and millions of reads, but if you don't have the knowledge or the understanding of the game, how to make the correct adjustments, I don't care how many reads you have, you are going to lose. So let's get started with solid strategy. I was thinking that I should go over every single position and how you play solid pot limit Omaha just in general, but then I found that this would take me like maybe 1 week of footage just to go through every single situation, like from every position. So, and Omaha is also difficult to explain ranges in detail because it all depends so much on what table you're on. But if you're looking for to build like a solid base to stand on, I can recommend you to go to use a Holder Manager and go to Leak Buster. Get the Omaha Leak Buster because we were playing Omaha. Here you can find how you are doing in different spots and where you're losing money, where you're winning money, where you're deviating a lot from the norm. And this Leak Buster is built from a big database of hands, and they have looked at how do the most winning players play in general, and that they have showed here with the green dots. You're supposed to re-raise a steal from small blind between 5.4 and 8.5%. Now this of course is not taking into account the fact that if you are game selecting in a specific way, your stats are going to be skewed in a certain direction. So in my case, when I'm game selecting, I usually sit in position of the loose players, which means that from small blind I'm going to re-raise them a lot more than I would if I sat down on a random table. If you're not game selecting like that, your stats are going to look so much different. And also, when the database was made for Leak Buster, the games were probably very different than what they are today. So don't worry about the overall grade. You can see that I have a C+ here. But it's good to get an understanding of where the breaking points are, like when you're leaving the norm. So then you can question yourself, like, okay, why am I so much over in this stat, and why am I so much below in another one? And as long as you understand why you have this quote-unquote leaks, then it's probably not an issue. But it's a very good way to build a solid strategy. I'm not going to go over all the functions here in Leak Buster because it's going to take weeks. It's a very you can go over like everything. You can look at your positions, how you're doing from them, and your pre-flop hands, like what type of hands you're losing with, what types of hands you're winning with, and your trouble hands. You can look at your 3-betting ranges, in position, out of position, and when you're winning, when you're losing, everything. And you can look at specific filters. They explain very well. I don't find this too helpful though. I mean, some of them, it's good to listen to what he's got to say. He's got a video for every stat, and I think it's somewhat helpful. So spend some time with this program, and I guarantee you that your base strategy is going to get stronger in some way. At least your understanding of the game is going to get better. And not only is your solid strategy going to get better, you're also going to be able to spot your opponent's leaks much faster and more precisely than you were before. So let's get into reads, and I want to talk about two different types of reads. The first one I call weak reads, and that is, you hear people say like, oh, I'm an aggressive player, or he's a passive player, I like to play against tight guys, loose guys, he's a tag, he's a lag, and he's bluffy. And all these reads are so I mean, general reads, but they don't really mean anything. If you tell me that, okay, this guy is aggressive, my adjustment to that from my solid ground strategy would be to maybe be a bit more on the cautious side and not c-bet as many flops, not check raise as many flops, or just some very, very basic adjustments, but they won't really help me to beat him. And the same goes for all of these other reads that I call weak reads. You can see that they're all in general. They don't pinpoint any specific thing that your opponent does that you can exploit. So that leads us into the next type of read that I call the strong reads. And there are really two types of strong reads in my opinion. And the first one is, if you get a good understanding of the stats that is normal, then you can start just watching the HUD and see, okay, this guy is playing way below the norm. And these numbers, by the way, I've gotten from Leak Buster. So you can use these stats to kind of just, if something is very much out of the ordinary, your radar should really go off, and you should start thinking about, okay, what is he doing? What is he, and how can I exploit that? So these are like alarm bells that should go off in your head if they are way off on these stats. And these are just examples. There are more stats that you should be looking at, for example, 3-betting ranges and so on. Yeah, enough about that. I want to talk about the most important strong read that you can have, and that is showdowns, because it doesn't get any more specific than that. When you get a hand to showdown and you see your opponent's hand and you go over every single action that was taken during the hand, and you see that your opponent played in a way that was very different from how you would have played the hand, then it's time to start thinking and try to get into his head and go like, okay, I'm playing like this and he's not, so am I confident that my way of playing this hand is the right way? If not, I should really get into studying those spots. If I am sure that my way my reasoning in this spot is good, then his reasoning is probably weaker than mine, and I want to understand how he thinks in these type of spots. So, for example, let's say that we are playing at a regular table. We raise with ace, king, queen, jack with ace of clubs. The flop comes 3 clubs. We get 1 caller pre-flop. We are 100 big blinds deep, and the flop comes 3 clubs. We bet. Let's just say that we bet the flop. The turn breaks. The flop comes 3 clubs, by the way, so we have did not blocker. We bet the flop. We get snap called. Bet the turn. We get snap called, and we bet the river, and everything breaks. And we get snap calls all the way. And he shows up with, let's say, the top 2 pair. This is something that should really like start your thinking. So if he's snap calling me with his very, very marginal hands in these spots in 3 streets, what does this mean for my future game plan versus this specific opponent? So this kind of information is very, very valuable. And some adjustments in this spot. I mean, I could go over a lot of different spots and spend a lot of time on this, and I will do that in the last video in this series. I'm going to talk about how I make adjustments from showdowns that I see. But for now, we're just going to talk about this flush hand. So some adjustments that can be made is we're not going to be bluffing him too much on monotone boards. We are going to go for value lighter. So versus some opponents, you can't really bet 3 streets with, let's say we have a the 4th nut flush draw, or excuse me, the 4th nut flush. Versus some opponents, you can't really bet 3 streets for value there, because they are going to fold all their top 2 pairs, all their sets, and even some lower flushes, and they're only going to continue with better hands. So it just makes no sense to go ahead and fire those hands for 3 streets. But versus someone who caught you down with top 2 pair, you're going to be able to make your value range wider, and you can bet all streets with lower flushes. This is just one example. I mean, there are infinite examples of this, but just to give you an understanding of how powerful these reads are and how specific adjustments you can make just by seeing one showdown. And that is a big difference from the weak reads, where you say that someone is aggressive and you don't really, I mean, yeah, it doesn't really tell you anything. So the adjustments that we make are not necessarily on every street, and it's not necessarily on like one street. It can be any street, it can be all the streets. So it's important to not fall in the trap of, oh, he's so bluffy, so now I'm going to call him down on flop, turn and river as soon as I have top 2 pair. Because what does it mean that someone is bluffy? Maybe he's potting river with air like all the time in small pots, but he's never making a bluff in the bigger pots or when he has bet flop, turn and river. So these specific reads are the reads that are going to make you a strong player, and that are going to help you like climb the stakes and start beating even the better players. So until next time, I just want to say good luck at the tables, and try to find some specific reads and write notes on players. Give them colors. Just do whatever to make specific adjustments and see how well you do at that. And then in the next video, I'm going to play a session where I talk about showdowns and what adjustments I make specifically. So that's all for today, and good luck at the tables.